The story of Harry Potter seemed complete. In 2007, J.K. Rowling had placed the final period on Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, closing the pages on a saga that had captivated millions. For years later, in 2011, the last film adaptation flickered across cinema screens, and for the first time in over a decade, fans around the world faced a sobering question: what comes next? The Wizarding World, though vast and beloved, had always existed within the confines of printed pages and cinematic reels. Yet the hunger for more was insatiable. Readers were no longer satisfied with revisiting the 7 books. They wanted to dive deeper into the backstories of their favorite characters, uncover the mysteries of wand lore, and walk the cobblestone streets of Diagon Alley as if they truly lived there. The fandom longed for an expansion, not merely a continuation, but a transformation. It was in this cultural moment that J.K. Rowling unveiled Pottermore. Not a new novel, nor a new film, but something entirely different, a digital extension of the Wizarding World. Described as a unique online reading experience, Pottermore promised to merge storytelling with interactivity, technology with imagination. For the first time, the world of Harry Potter would not only be read or watched, it could be explored, experienced, and even personalized. Pottermore was more than a website, it was an experiment in digital literature, a daring attempt to redefine how a story could live beyond its original medium. Fans were invited to step through the screen as if through platform 9 3/4, where a sorting hat would assign them to houses, a wand would choose them, and exclusive lore would reveal secrets Rowling had never before shared. In this prologue begins the tale of Pottermore, its birth, rise, transformation, and legacy. It was both a treasure chest of hidden knowledge and a fragile experiment in digital fandom, at once celebrated and criticized, magical and imperfect. Its story is not just the history of a website but the chronicle of a cultural bridge, the place where the Wizarding World crossed into the digital age. The first sign was a whisper, not a shout. After the final film credits rolled in 2011, a simple word, Pottermore, began to surface in interviews, in fan forums, and in a small, ominously quiet website with a feathered logo and a countdown. No new book, no trailer, no theme park blueprint. Just a promise that something was coming, and that it would live on the internet. For a fandom trained to decode clues, the restraint was intentional. J.K. Rowling's announcement arrived via a short video. She spoke directly to readers about a unique online reading experience, a place to explore the story in a new way. It wasn't a handoff to Hollywood or a licensing deal with a game studio. It was the author herself inviting millions to meet her on a platform built for them. The timing mattered. Between 2007 and 2011, the digital habits of readers changed. Social media accelerated word of mouth, mobile screens became the second living room, and interactive no longer meant a DVD extra, it meant a space you could actually inhabit. Franchises were learning to extend across formats, but few authors of Rowling's stature were willing to design the extension themselves. The whisper said, "This world isn't over. It's evolving." Early signals suggested the project would blur lines between literature, game, and archive. The promise was not only more content but a different way to access it. You would experience the books chapter by chapter, uncover new writing from Rowling, and, if rumor was true, be sorted by an online ceremony designed with her input. The message to fans was clear. Your history with this story has value, and the platform will return it to you in a form only the author could sanction. Behind the scenes, the whisper functioned like a market test. Would the audience follow the story into a digital space that demanded time and identity, registration, house allegiance, a one choice, rather than the passive consumption of another film? The answer arrived before the doors even opened. Traffic spikes, forum speculation, and media coverage built a pre-launch brand without a single screenshot of the experience. In business terms, Pottermore had achieved two scarce assets before launch: attention and permission. Attention is noisy, permission is earned. Fans were not just hearing about Pottermore, they were waiting to be invited in. The invitation came in the form of a challenge, a limited early access program that asked fans to solve clues over several days to secure a spot. It was a clever filter. Instead of rewarding mere speed or luck, it rewarded engaged readers who could navigate lore. The scarcity of access created a social economy, screenshots traded like artifacts, rumors verified by the lucky few who made it inside. Scarcity, in this case, wasn't an artificial paywall, it was a narrative device. Hogwarts has gates. So did Pottermore. Expectation management became part of the story. Some fans hoped for a full-fledged MMORPG, others pictured a digital encyclopedia. The Whisper left room for both. By resisting an exact definition, the project protected its runway. It could be a game in some places, an archive in others, a community hub in between. In strategy language, Pottermore was positioning itself as a category hybrid, not a competitor to existing products, but a new layer that reframed what official fandom could look like online. The cultural stakes were higher than the product roadmap suggested. Harry Potter wasn't simply an IP. It was a rite of passage linked to childhood and school years. To bring that world online was to migrate memory itself. That Whisper therefore carried two promises at once: continuity, you can keep living in this world, and authority, you'll learn truths about it here, from the source. Fans had written millions of words of fan fiction, charted timelines, documented spells. Now the author would validate, expand, and sometimes redirect that collective effort. From an operational standpoint, Pottermore's pre-launch phase solved a classic platform problem: how to seed content and community simultaneously. Rowling's original writings, new character backstories, histories of magical institutions, the logic of wand lore would be the initial gravity well. The interactive journey through the books would be the onboarding pathway. Identity mechanics, house, wand, later Patronus, would be the retention engine. The Whisper hinted at each layer without giving away the blueprint. The press cycle amplified the aura. Headlines lifted the phrase "online reading experience" and struggled to categorize it, which only strengthened curiosity. Analysts read it as an experiment in digital publishing and direct-to-fan distribution. Teachers imagined classroom tie-ins. Technologists wondered if it might prototype a new kind of living text, one updated not in editions, but in moments. Meanwhile, fans asked the question that mattered most to them: will it feel like magic? The answer sat inside a paradox at the heart of Pottermore's pitch. Magic in Harry Potter depends on rules you don't always see. Magic online depends on rules you barely notice: speed, stability, design that disappears into delight. The Whisper promised both hidden rooms and hidden code, lore and load times. Delivering on that promise would become the test of the whole enterprise. In retrospect, the pre-launch period served as the book's first chapter because it established tone and stakes. Pottermore would not merely be about the wizarding world, it would ask you to participate in it, to make choices that signaled who you were within its moral geometry: brave, loyal, clever, or ambitious. The Whisper was an invitation to identity, not just information. When the countdown ended and the first wave crossed the threshold, the churn of modern fandom, screenshots, think pieces, tutorial threads, met the quiet ritual of reading. The experiment was underway. The world had not received a new novel, but it had been given a new way to turn the page. The Whisper became a door, but not everyone could walk through it at once. Pottermore's launch strategy was not to fling open the gates but to creak them slowly, deliberately. In July 2011, fans around the world were invited to compete for early access to what was called the Pottermore Beta. The invitation itself became an event, a trial of both loyalty and lore. The mechanism was simple but brilliantly aligned with the source material. A week-long challenge known as the Magical Quill. Each day, a new clue was released on the Pottermore site. Solve it correctly, and you could find the location of the enchanted quill hidden on a partner webpage. Spot it, click it, and you secured a precious beta key. With that, you were among the chosen few allowed to enter Hogwarts before the official opening. This wasn't just marketing, it was world building through scarcity. The quill was a direct echo of Rowling's universe, where magical objects revealed themselves only to the worthy. In practice, it gamified fandom itself. Only those who knew enough trivia, stayed up late enough, or refreshed the page often enough would gain passage. For many, the chase became as memorable as the destination. Those who succeeded found themselves inside a half-built castle. Pottermore's beta was raw, glitchy, even frustrating at times, but it was also alive with possibility. The sorting ceremony worked. The wand chose its wizard. Early lore was waiting to be uncovered. Screenshots leaked into forums, igniting envy and exhilaration in equal measure. The closed nature of the beta only heightened its value. Being in Pottermore felt like possessing a secret. Yet scarcity has its costs. As the weeks dragged on, frustration mounted among those locked out. The Pottermore brand, designed to delight, began to wobble under the weight of impatience. On social media, hashtags like #PottermoreProblems trended. For every ecstatic beta tester, a dozen excluded fans vented about errors, wait times, and the unfairness of the hunt. From a business perspective, the beta phase was both a stress test and a loyalty filter. Technically, it allowed developers to patch issues before millions arrived. Socially, it deepened the bond of early adopters, who became evangelists for the brand. But it also created an unintended division, those inside versus those outside. In fandom terms, it mirrored the magical world itself. Muggles and wizards, haves and have-nots. Still, the gamble worked. By the time Pottermore opened fully in April 2012, anticipation had ballooned into a frenzy. The scarcity had turned a digital platform into a rite of passage. Entry into Pottermore was not just logging in, it was crossing a threshold, proving your worth, and joining a chosen society. The beta invitations were thus more than a launch tactic. They were Pottermore's first lesson in digital enchantment. Magic is magnified when it is scarce, when access itself feels like discovery. For a story world built on secrets, the strategy was thematically perfect, even if practically imperfect. And for the fans who secured their spot, it was unforgettable, a story they could tell about the day they were among the first to step inside Hogwarts, reborn online. For many fans, the first true moment of magic inside Pottermore was not the shimmering illustrations, the hidden objects, or even Rowling's unreleased lore. It was the sorting ceremony. At Hogwarts, this ritual marked the start of every witch and wizard's journey. In Pottermore, it became the central engine of identity, binding each user not only to a digital house but to a community of millions around the world. Unlike the whimsical online quizzes that had circulated for years, Pottermore's sorting hat had authority. J.K. Rowling herself had written the questions and approved the logic behind the algorithm. The ceremony was presented as definitive. Once you were sorted, your house was fixed. No retries, no gaming the system. For the first time since the publication of the books, fans could discover where they truly belonged, according to the creator herself. The experience unfolded with care. A series of mysterious, personality-driven questions appeared, some moral, some aesthetic, some designed to catch the user off guard. Would you choose the quiet forest or the bustling sea? Which artifact would you rescue from a burning building? What does your instinct say when danger approaches? Each answer fed into Rowling's hidden formula, a black box that promised revelation at the end. The moment of truth arrived with a burst of animation, the sorting hat's verdict displayed across the screen, followed by the crest of Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin. For some, it confirmed lifelong expectations. For others, it upended them completely. a self-professed Gryffindor might discover they were Ravenclaw. A fan who feared Slytherin's reputation might learn they belonged there after all, and be asked to embrace it. This ceremony became a defining feature of Pottermore's impact. On social media, sorting results were shared like bloodlines, instantly fueling house pride and identity. Online communities sprang up around each house, with forums, fan art, and digital common rooms. Friendships were forged across continents through nothing more than a shared allegiance. The Sorting Hat had always symbolized belonging in the books. Online, it recreated that belonging in real time, scaling it to millions. There was also a business dimension to this digital rite of passage. The Sorting Hat provided Pottermore with a unique retention hook. Unlike most websites, which struggled to keep users coming back, Pottermore had bound them to an identity that encouraged loyalty. Once a Gryffindor, always a Gryffindor. Every return visit carried the weight of a personal stake, points to earn for the House Cup, achievements to unlock for one's banner. Engagement was no longer transactional, it was tribal. The sorting also sparked debate. Fans questioned whether the algorithm was fair, whether the questions were too few or too cryptic, whether house populations were balanced artificially. Some created multiple accounts to test outcomes, only to find that their results still felt strangely consistent. In this way, the sorting ceremony also mirrored the lore it was based on, a mix of destiny, choice, and mystery. For Pottermore, this moment was a triumph. By digitizing the Sorting Hat, the platform had done more than gamify literature. It had delivered an emotional experience of authorship, the feeling that J.K. Rowling herself had whispered your Hogwarts destiny. More than potions, more than lore, this was the moment fans remembered most vividly. Pottermore promised knowledge, but the sorting ceremony delivered identity. And in the long arc of fandom, identity is the glue that keeps communities alive. It wasn't just a quiz, it was the key that unlocked the door to belonging in the digital Hogwarts. If the Sorting Hat gave Pottermore its heartbeat, Rowling's hidden writings gave it a soul. The true treasure of the platform was not simply interactivity, but access to pieces of the wizarding world that had never been revealed before. For years, fans had speculated about the pasts of beloved characters, the origins of magical traditions, and the hidden mechanics of the universe. Pottermore promised answers, and for the first time, Rowling delivered them in a controlled, digital form. The lore was woven seamlessly into the chapter-by-chapter exploration of the books. As users clicked through illustrations of Diagon Alley, Privet Drive, or the Great Hall, they could stumble upon glowing hotspots that unlocked new writings. These weren't throwaway snippets, they were full essays, backstories, and histories authored directly by Rowling. They felt less like promotional content and more like lost pages of canon. One of the earliest reveals was the backstory of Professor Minerva McGonagall. Fans learned of her childhood in the Scottish Highlands, her struggle between magical and muggle worlds, her early career, and even a tragic love story that shaped her life. Suddenly, a stern teacher glimpsed briefly in the novels became a layered, profoundly human character. Other treasures followed. The history of Quidditch, charting the evolution of the game from its brutal medieval roots to the modern sport. The origins of Azkaban, detailing how the infamous prison came to hold the darkest of wizards. Wand lore essays, explaining why certain woods and cores chose the witches and wizards they did. The Ghosts of Hogwarts, complete with tragic tales behind nearly headless Nick, the Bloody Baron, and others. Each piece expanded the world outward and backward, giving the impression that the Harry Potter saga was only the tip of an iceberg. The Pottermore extras quickly became essential to the fan lexicon, quoted on wikis and debated in forums as if they were scripture. The release strategy was just as important as the content itself. Rowling's new writings were scattered like Easter eggs across the interactive landscape, encouraging fans to search thoroughly, trade tips, and collaborate to unlock them all. In this way, lore became both a reward and a community exercise. The act of discovery mattered as much as the words themselves. For Rowling, Pottermore served a dual purpose. It was both an authorial archive and a publishing experiment. Rather than writing a standalone encyclopedia, she was drip-feeding canon directly to readers, bypassing traditional book releases. This method allowed her to maintain control of her universe while testing the digital appetite for new material. In effect, she had transformed Pottermore into a kind of a living appendix to the series. The impact was immediate. Fans who had grown up with the books felt their investment validated. This wasn't fan fiction, rumor, or interview trivia, it was sanctioned knowledge, straight from the creator. Academic scholars, too, began citing Pottermore texts as secondary canon. Suddenly, the boundary between fiction and reference blurred. Pottermore was not just a fan hub, it was a library. And yet, the delivery wasn't without tension. Some critics argued that Rowling's constant additions risked over-explaining the universe, stripping away mystery. Others worried that canon was becoming fragmented, scattered across a digital platform that not every fan could access easily. Still, most agreed, the writings elevated Pottermore from novelty to necessity. By embedding hidden stories into the digital framework, Pottermore redefined what it meant to expand a literary world. The books had always been finite, Pottermore made them infinite. Every hidden essay reminded users of the central truth of fandom: the magic of a story doesn't end when the book closes, it continues in the spaces the author chooses to reveal. Among the many hidden treasures scattered across Pottermore, few made as deep an impact as the story of Professor Minerva McGonagall. For years, readers had admired her as the stern yet fair deputy headmistress of Hogwarts, the Transfiguration teacher whose sharp eyes could silence a classroom with a glance. But in Pottermore, Rowling peeled back the layers of this formidable witch, offering a glimpse into her past that surprised even the most devoted fans. The essay revealed McGonagall's birth in the Scottish Highlands, the daughter of a Muggle minister and a witch who lived in secrecy. From the start, Minerva was caught between two worlds, her magical heritage and the quiet, restrictive expectations of her father's parish life. The struggle to reconcile these identities became a theme that mirrored Harry's own, though in a quieter, more tragic key. Rowling detailed McGonagall's school years at Hogwarts, where she excelled in Transfiguration and caught the attention of Albus Dumbledore, her future mentor. Yet the real surprise was not her academic brilliance, but her personal heartbreak. As a young witch, McGonagall fell deeply in love with a Muggle farmer, Dougal McGregor, and even accepted his proposal. But her mother's warning about the impossibility of binding her magical life to a non-magical one haunted her. On the eve of marriage, she broke it off, sacrificing her happiness to preserve her identity and the safety of both worlds. The revelation stunned fans. McGonagall, often seen as severe and almost otherworldly, became humanized in a way that resonated with readers who had grown up with the books. She was no longer just the unflappable authority figure, she was a woman who had known love, loss, and compromise. The essay painted her sternness not as coldness but as discipline forged by sacrifice. This law drop also reframed McGonagall's relationships in the novels. Her protectiveness toward students, her unwavering loyalty to Dumbledore, even her occasional flashes of warmth, all could be traced back to the emotional core revealed in Pottermore. For fans who revisited the books after reading the essay, McGonagall appeared not simply as a teacher, but as a survivor of difficult choices. On a meta level, the McGonagall essay demonstrated Pottermore's unique power. This was not trivia, it was narrative expansion. By choosing to reveal it digitally, Rowling gave fans the sense of discovering a secret, of being entrusted with knowledge the wider world might never know. Unlike appendices in The Lord of the Rings or glossaries in fantasy series, this information wasn't delivered as a reference book, it was uncovered, piece by piece, as though the walls of Hogwarts had whispered it to you directly. For Pottermore, McGonagall's story became a proof of concept. The platform wasn't just about digital bells and whistles. It could deliver new canon with emotional weight, stories that changed how readers perceived the original text. If the sorting ceremony bonded fans to their houses, lore drops like this bonded them to the characters. In retrospect, McGonagall's essay set the tone for Pottermore's greatest strength, revealing the hidden lives of familiar faces. It was a reminder that every stern professor, every side character, had a history worth telling, and that Pottermore was the vault where those histories were kept. If the sorting ceremony gave Pottermore its soul, and Rowling's lore gave it weight, the interactive mechanics gave it play. One of the platform's most ambitious goals was to let users not just read about magic, but perform it. Through digital alchemy, clicks, drags, and timed reactions, fans could collect ingredients, brew potions, and cast spells, creating the closest thing yet to practicing wizardry online. The first encounter with this interactivity often came during the wand ceremony. After completing a short personality-based quiz, users were awarded a wand, chosen according to Rowling's own system of wood types, core materials, and flexibility. Each wand was unique, not simply in appearance but in lore. A user might discover they wielded an oak wand with phoenix feather core, or perhaps willow with unicorn hair. Pottermore provided essays explaining what each pairing meant, how certain woods responded to certain temperaments, how cores influence magical behavior, and why no two wands were truly alike. The wand experience was more than cosmetic. It was an identity anchor, binding each user to an object of lore. Fans would debate on forums whether their wand matched their personality, and many carried their digital wand assignment into real-world fan activities, cosplay, or merchandise. Just as the sorting ceremony shaped belonging, the wand system offered individuality. From there, interactivity deepened. Potion brewing became a cornerstone of the early platform. Users could gather ingredients, bezoars, snake fangs, powdered root of asphodel, and follow recipes under timed conditions. The process required precision, too much heat, and the potion spoiled, too little attention, and the brew failed. The feature was notoriously buggy, yet this imperfection only seemed to amplify its cult appeal. Screenshots of botched potions circulated as digital inside jokes, while successful brewers proudly flaunted their skill as though they had truly mastered Snape's classroom. Spell casting, too, offered competitive play. Users could duel one another by tracing wand movements with their mouse or keyboard, casting familiar spells from the books, Expelliarmus, Stupefy, and beyond. Accuracy and timing determined the victor. The dueling system tied directly into the House Cup competition. Every victory contributed points, transforming personal skill into collective glory. Together, these mechanics gave Pottermore a unique rhythm. It wasn't merely a lore archive to dip into, it was a living game where time and effort could be invested, where your house benefited from your practice, and where your identity as a wizard or witch gained credibility through achievement. For the first time, reading Harry Potter wasn't passive, it was participatory. From a business perspective, these features marked an early experiment in gamification of fandom. Engagement wasn't measured only in clicks but in hours spent brewing, dueling, or replaying to earn more points. In today's terms, Pottermore anticipated the mechanics of loyalty apps and online games, but cloaked them in the aesthetic of Hogwarts. Fans weren't chasing badges or points, they were chasing the House Cup. Yet, the interactivity carried risks. For some users, the technical limitations, lag, crashes, potion bugs, led to frustration. Not every fan wanted gaming elements in their reading experience, and a growing faction argued that the lore drops were the true jewel of Pottermore, not the mechanics. Others loved the play but wished it was deeper, closer to a fully fledged game than a series of mini-challenges. Still, at its peak, potion brewing and spell dueling turned Pottermore into a daily ritual for thousands. Just as the Sorting Hat and Wands rooted fans in identity, interactivity rooted them in behavior. To log on was to act, not just to read. And in the act of play, Pottermore succeeded in making the wizarding world feel lived in, if only through a mouse and keyboard. The mechanics were imperfect, yes, but they embodied the spirit of Pottermore's experiment, the belief that magic should not only be imagined, but enacted. Every Hogwarts student dreamed of winning the House Cup. In the novels, the competition provided drama, rivalry, and triumph. In Pottermore, it became the beating heart of the platform's community dynamic, transforming individual play into collective purpose. From the moment users were sorted, they were no longer just individuals exploring the site, they were members of Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin, responsible for contributing to their house's glory. The House Cup was the connective tissue that gave meaning to potion brewing, spell dueling, and even reading activity. Every point earned was a brick in the Great Tower of House Pride. The structure was simple. Throughout the year, users could accumulate points for their houses by completing activities. Potion brewing yielded significant rewards, while successful spell duels contributed valuable increments. Even meticulous exploration, finding hidden objects or unlocking lore, could deliver small boosts. At the end of each term, the house with the highest total would be awarded the Digital House Cup, its crest displayed triumphantly on Pottermore's homepage. But in practice, the House Cup became far more than a scoreboard. It was a cultural phenomenon within the platform. Forums lit up with strategy guides, which potions yielded the most points, which dueling tactics ensured victory, how to maximize output without burning out. Fans organized study sessions and not for exams, but for potion brewing marathons. Screenshots of point totals were shared like sports scores. For many, it felt less like a website and more like a season-long tournament. Rivalries flourished. Gryffindors and Slytherins relived the tension of the books, but online, Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs often emerged as unexpected powerhouses. Entire threads were dedicated to House Pride, filled with slogans, banners, and friendly taunts. A victory wasn't just digital, it was communal, felt in every corner of the fandom. The first House Cup was awarded in July 2012, and its outcome stunned the community. Slytherin, often maligned in the books, emerged victorious, seizing the inaugural title. The shock resonated across fandom spaces, underdogs in the narrative had triumphed in the digital arena. Many celebrated this as a rewriting of Potter history, proof that online, the house stereotypes could be shattered. Each subsequent cup added new layers of drama. Allegations of cheating arose when some players exploited glitches to rack up points. Developers scrambled to patch loopholes. Arguments broke out in forums over fairness and balance. Should potion brewing really yield so many more points than dueling? Should activity frequency or skill carry more weight? These debates, while heated, underscored something crucial: fans cared. The House Cup was no longer just a feature, it was an identity marker that inspired loyalty and obsession. From a strategic standpoint, the House Cup was Pottermore's most effective engagement engine. It provided recurring cycles of excitement, with stakes that reset each term. Unlike quizzes or lore drops, which could be consumed in one sitting, the Cup demanded ongoing effort. The longer you stayed, the more your house benefited. Retention was reframed not as personal motivation, but as social responsibility. To leave was to let your house down. The House Cup also demonstrated Pottermore's unique contribution to digital fandom. Where most platforms fostered individual achievement, badges, ranks, leaderboards, Pottermore built collective belonging. Your value was not measured solely in personal stats but in how you strengthened your house. The design mirrored Hogwarts itself, a place where identity was both individual and communal, where pride was amplified through shared colors and crests. Of course, not all fans embraced the pressure. Some found the competition exhausting, or resented how the system rewarded time-rich players over casual visitors. Others worried the cup overshadowed the lore, shifting focus from Rowling's writing to a gamified grind. Yet even critics admitted, the cup kept people coming back. By turning fans into competitors and collaborators simultaneously, Pottermore had found its magic formula. The House Cup was not just a contest, it was a digital reenactment of the novel spirit, a ritual that gave structure to the fandom's energy. In the end, the House Cup Wars proved that the wizarding world could thrive beyond the page. For every heated debate, every late-night potion brewed, every duel fought, the message was clear: Hogwarts was alive, not just in memory, but in practice. For all its competitions and identity building, Pottermore's most enchanting quality was its sense of discovery. Beyond points and potions, the site invited fans to slow down, to linger over illustrations, and to uncover secrets tucked into every corner. It was designed not as a straight line, but as a labyrinth, a digital echo of Diagon Alley or the Forbidden Forest, where magic revealed itself to the curious. The experience began with the books themselves. Users advanced chapter by chapter, moving through interactive illustrations that captured key scenes: Harry's cupboard under the stairs, the Hogwarts Express, the Sorting Feast. Each scene was layered with detail. Clicking on objects revealed lore or collected items: an owl perched in a corner, a mysterious book on a shelf, a sparkling vial on a table. Some discoveries unlocked new writings from Rowling, others added trinkets to a user's inventory. The illustrations weren't static backdrops, they were portals waiting to be explored. This design rewarded patience. Rushing through a chapter meant missing hidden items. Returning to scenes often revealed details overlooked the first time. The mechanic mimicked the books themselves, where rereading often unearthed foreshadowing or subtle character moments. Discovery became not just a mechanic, but a philosophy. The world of Harry Potter was richer than it appeared at first glance. Some secrets were practical. Collecting potion ingredients scattered through chapters was necessary for brewing success. Others were symbolic, like chocolate frog cards featuring famous witches and wizards, echoing Harry's first steps into the magical world. These collectibles carried no direct utility but became badges of dedication, status symbols shared proudly on forums. To find them all was to prove one's thoroughness as a reader and a fan. Easter eggs extended beyond the platform itself. The Magical Quill beta launch had trained fans to search for hidden meaning, and Pottermore carried that ethos forward. Clues hinted at deeper connections between lore drops, hidden relationships between characters, or thematic echoes in Rowling's essays. Forums buzzed with theories sparked by a single detail in an interactive scene. In this way, Pottermore recreated the speculative energy of fandom, the same thrill that once drove readers to dissect the books for clues about Horcruxes or Snape's loyalties. The art itself played a crucial role. Pottermore's illustrations were whimsical yet atmospheric, blending storybook simplicity with layered symbolism. They were not meant to rival film visuals but to offer an alternative lens, one closer to the imagination of readers than the blockbuster adaptations. For many, clicking through a Pottermore chapter felt like stepping into an illustrated companion to the novels, interactive, immersive, and deeply personal. From a business perspective, this mechanic served retention as effectively as the House Cup. Exploration created stickiness. Users who believed they had missed something were compelled to return. The collectibles offered intrinsic motivation, transforming casual readers into completionists. Each new chapter release triggered waves of activity, as fans swarmed the site to uncover the latest trove of secrets. Yet, discovery also highlighted Pottermore's limitations. As time passed, some fans felt the treasure hunts became repetitive, the rewards too trivial, the novelty wearing thin. Others lamented that exploration sometimes overshadowed the lore itself, players focused on collecting objects rather than reflecting on Rowling's writings. Still, at its best, the design transformed reading into play, reminding users that stories are not just consumed, but inhabited. The art of discovery on Pottermore was both literal and symbolic, It mirrored the essence of the wizarding world, where staircases moved, portraits whispered, and secrets lay hidden in plain sight. By making exploration the core of its design, Pottermore taught fans a lesson embedded in Rowling's fiction: magic is not always announced, it is found by those willing to look closely. Among the many treasures hidden in Pottermore's chapters, none captured the spirit of discovery quite like the Chocolate Frog cards. Fans who had read about them in Philosopher's Stone remembered Harry's first moments on the Hogwarts Express, ripping open the shiny packet to find Albus Dumbledore's face staring back. On Pottermore, that moment was reimagined for the digital age. Every user could hunt for their own cards, tucked away like golden prizes inside the site's interactive illustrations. The cards weren't simply decorative collectibles. Each one contained lore about witches and wizards from across magical history, some familiar, some entirely new. Dumbledore's biography, for example, went beyond what the books revealed, offering fresh insight into his legacy. Other cards featured names that had appeared only in passing in Rowling's work, expanded here with short but vivid descriptions. There were even original creations, figures who existed solely within Pottermore, until Rowling wrote them into being. For fans, the thrill came from both nostalgia and novelty. Collecting Chocolate Frog cards echoed Harry's own initiation into the magical world, but it also served as a direct extension of canon. Every new card was a fragment of world-building, proof that the wizarding world extended far beyond the stories of Harry and his friends. The hunt for cards quickly became a communal obsession. Forums and fan sites compiled guides, where to click, which scenes held cards, and how to maximize one's collection. Screenshots of rare finds circulated like trophies. Completionists took pride in showing off a full set, while casual explorers delighted in the serendipity of stumbling upon a card unexpectedly. In an era when digital badges and achievements were becoming a trend across gaming platforms, Pottermore's cards offered a uniquely literary version, collectibles grounded in story, not just status. The design also reinforced Pottermore's philosophy of slow discovery. You couldn't simply purchase a complete set or skip ahead. The cards were hidden in chapters, waiting to be uncovered through careful exploration. This rewarded attentiveness and replay value. Fans returned to chapters again and again, scrutinizing each pixel for a glimmer of something missed. The cards turned reading into archaeology. But their impact was more than mechanical. The Chocolate Frog cards carried a cultural weight. They reminded users that the wizarding world was populated not only by the heroes of the novels, but by centuries of witches and wizards who had built its traditions. In this way, the cards subtly shifted perspective. Harry's story was central, yes, but it was just one story among thousands. Pottermore was, at its best, an archive of a civilization, and the cards were the bite-sized biographies that made that civilization feel real. For Pottermore itself, the cards became a symbol of its broader promise, to turn background detail into living history. They weren't flashy features or competition drivers like the House Cup. They were quiet, optional treasures, meaningful precisely because they felt small. They demonstrated that magic didn't always announce itself with sparks and jewels. It could be found in a scrap of lore tucked inside a sweet. In the end, the Chocolate Frog cards embodied the charm of Pottermore's design philosophy. They blended nostalgia with novelty, reward with storytelling, play with learning. They reminded users that to be a part of the wizarding world was not just to wield a wand or win a duel, but to collect its stories, one enchanted card at a time. For all its early promise, Pottermore's magic did not last forever. What began as an enchanting blend of interactivity, discovery, and lore gradually lost some of its sparkle. By the mid-2010s, the platform was showing cracks, not only in its technology, but in its identity. Fans who once flocked to its digital corridors began to drift away, leaving behind a site that felt less like a castle alive with secrets and more like an empty hall echoing with nostalgia. The first signs came with technical frustration. Potion brewing often glitched, Duels froze, and certain browsers struggled to load the richly illustrated chapters. While dedicated fans persevered, casual visitors found the friction exhausting. What was meant to feel immersive sometimes felt clunky, a reminder that Magic Online still required smooth coding and reliable infrastructure. For some, Pottermore's enchantment was lost the moment the site wouldn't load. As Pottermore grew, its team faced a difficult question: was it a game, an archive, or a publishing platform? At launch, it had been all three. Yet sustaining each element required resources the site struggled to maintain. Over time, the interactive features were scaled back. By 2015, potion brewing and spell dueling were removed altogether, along with the intricate chapter-by-chapter navigation. What remained was simpler: quizzes, news articles, and Rowling's lore essays. This shift disoriented fans. For those who had treasured the early days of collecting Chocolate Frog cards or racing for House Cup points, the loss felt like a betrayal. The platform had promised an evolving Hogwarts experience, but instead seemed to retreat into something flatter, less magical. The digital Hogwarts they had joined was being dismantled piece by piece. Rowling's writings still carried weight, but without the gamified structure around them, they felt less like discoveries and more like blog posts. The excitement of unlocking new lore faded. Meanwhile, the sorting ceremony and wand quiz remained, but these alone could not carry the site's engagement long-term. For many fans, the sense of community dissolved as activities dwindled. From a business perspective, the simplification made sense. Pottermore's elaborate mechanics had been expensive to maintain and challenging to scale across millions of users. By refocusing on publishing and quizzes, the platform could streamline costs and align with Rowling's growing global brand. Yet what made sense on paper often clashed with what fans valued most, with a sense of living inside the story. By 2016, Pottermore's enchantment had dimmed noticeably. Engagement slowed, forums grew quieter, and fans increasingly turned to other outlets: social media, fan fiction archives, or the expanding Harry Potter theme parks, for their magical fix. The platform had shifted from an experience to a reference point, from a world to a website. And yet, the story wasn't over. Even as the magic faded, Pottermore remained a significant repository of lore, and its influence lingered. The Sorting Hat still had authority. The Patronus quiz, added later, briefly reignited viral enthusiasm. But the dream of Pottermore as a living, evolving Hogwarts, a place as rich as the books themselves, was beginning to slip away. The fading enchantment marked a turning point. Pottermore had shown what was possible when literature met digital play, but it had also revealed the challenges of sustaining such an ambitious experiment. The next phase of its journey would not be about magic preserved, but about magic transformed. By the time the interactive features were dismantled, Pottermore felt less like a bustling school and more like an abandoned castle. The staircases no longer moved. The classrooms stood silent. The dueling club had shut its doors, and the potions lab had gone dark. Where once thousands of fans had gathered daily to brew, duel, and hunt for Chocolate Frog cards, now only a trickle of footsteps echoed through the halls. And yet, the castle still stood. Its walls were lined with Rowling's lore, McGonagall's heartbreak, the origins of Azkaban, the ghosts of Hogwarts. The Sorting Hat still waited for new arrivals, placing them carefully into Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, or Slytherin. A few loyalists still roamed the grounds, replaying the old chapters, clinging to the nostalgia of their first discoveries. For many fans, this twilight period was bittersweet. Pottermore was no longer magical in the way it had been, but it wasn't gone. It had become something quieter, a library where books were being written in real time rather than a playground alive with competition. Some users mourned what was lost, others adapted, finding comfort in the essays and quizzes that remained. From the outside, it was easy to say that Pottermore had failed. But that assessment overlooked the scale of its ambition. Few literary worlds had ever been brought online with such depth, blending interactivity, lore, and community. If the castle now seemed still, it was because the experiment had run its course. Pottermore had taught both fans and publishers what digital storytelling could achieve, and where it struggled to endure. This twilight moment mattered because it framed what came next. The playful interactivity of the early years had given way to a new identity, one more practical, more sustainable, and more aligned with the broader expansion of the Wizarding World brand. The castle was not crumbling, it was being repurposed. Its stones would be carried into a new foundation, Pottermore Publishing, a quieter but no less important chapter in the site's history. When the spell of interactivity began to wane, Pottermore found new life in an area where magic and business converged, digital publishing. From the very beginning, the platform had been more than just a fan experience, it had also been Rowling's vehicle for distributing the Harry Potter series in the digital age. By the mid-2010s, this dimension became its most stable and enduring identity. In 2012, Pottermore made history by becoming the exclusive retailer of Harry Potter ebooks and audiobooks. Until then, the books had never been officially available in digital form. Fans who wanted to revisit the saga on e-readers or mobile devices had no legitimate option. Pottermore changed that overnight, offering the 7 novels in formats compatible with Amazon Kindle, Apple iBooks, and other platforms, but always routed through the Pottermore shop. In a publishing world still grappling with the rise of ebooks, this was a bold move. Rowling and her team bypassed traditional publishers and positioned Pottermore as the digital gatekeeper of her work. The strategy was both revolutionary and controversial. On one hand, it gave Rowling complete control of pricing, distribution, and presentation. She could deliver the books directly to readers without ceding royalties to tech giants or major publishers. On the other hand, it challenged the industry's established order, signaling a future where authors of Rowling's stature could control their own digital empires. For fans, however, the shift was seamless. They finally had access to Harry's story in portable, modern formats, blessed with the authority of being official and canon. Pottermore Publishing didn't stop with the original 7 novels. Over time, it expanded into new digital offerings. Pottermore Presents 2016, a trio of short ebook collections that bundled Rowling's lore essays from the site into more accessible volumes, such as Hogwarts, an incomplete and unreliable guide. Enhanced editions, digital books with interactive features, illustrations, and annotations designed to enrich the reading experience. Audiobook expansion. Partnerships with Audible and other distributors made Stephen Fry's and Jim Dale's iconic narrations available globally, cementing Pottermore as the definitive hub for all audio adaptations. This publishing arm became the most profitable element of Pottermore. While potion brewing and house cup competitions had struggled to retain users, ebooks and audiobooks tapped into a consistent, global demand. Every year, new generations of readers discovered Harry Potter, and every year, Pottermore Publishing provided the gateway. At its peak, Pottermore Publishing wasn't just managing Harry Potter ebooks, it was a digital rights powerhouse. By carefully guarding licensing and distribution, it ensured that Rowling's works remained among the best-selling digital titles of all time. In the process, Pottermore reinvented itself from a whimsical experiment in digital storytelling into a cornerstone of the Wizarding World brand. And yet, this transition carried a trade-off. What fans gained in accessibility, they lost in magic. The whimsical interactivity of early Pottermore gave way to a storefront. Where once the site had been a digital Hogwarts alive with discovery, now it felt more like Flourish and Blots, a shop stocked with official merchandise. Efficient, useful, profitable, but less enchanting. From a strategic standpoint, the move was inevitable. Digital publishing was sustainable, scalable, and aligned with the long-term brand strategy of Warner Brothers and Rowling's team. But for the fans who remembered the thrill of dueling and the excitement of unlocking lore, Pottermore Publishing symbolized a narrowing of vision. The castle had become a marketplace. Still, the publishing arm was essential to Pottermore's legacy. It ensured that Harry Potter remained accessible in the digital age, preserved Rowling's control over her work, and laid the groundwork for the franchise's next transformation. The enchantment may have faded, but the business of magic was stronger than ever. In 2016, Pottermore unveiled a project that crystallized its shift from interactive playground to digital publisher, a trio of short ebook collections titled Pottermore Presents. For years, Rowling's essays had been scattered across the site, hidden behind hotspots and chapter illustrations. Fans loved the treasure hunt element, but the writings were fragmented and sometimes hard to find. Pottermore Presents solved that problem by packaging the lore into neat, thematic volumes, small, curated windows into the wizarding world. The three collections were Hogwarts, an incomplete and unreliable guide, a playful exploration of the castle itself, from its shifting staircases to its hidden rooms and eccentric staff. Short stories from Hogwarts of heroism, hardship and dangerous hobbies, essays on beloved figures like Minerva McGonagall, Remus Lupin, and other characters defined by resilience and sacrifice. Short stories from Hogwarts of Power, Politics and Pesky Poltergeists, a darker dive into the world's shadowy corners, featuring Dolores Umbridge, Horace Slughorn, and the history of Azkaban. Each volume was slim, designed to be read in a single sitting, but dense with revelations. Readers who had missed the original Pottermore experience could now access these stories on Kindle, iBooks, or Nook, with the portability and permanence of ebooks. For many, it was the first time Rowling's digital canon felt like real books. The collections also signaled an important business lesson. By repackaging existing content into purchasable form, Pottermore demonstrated how digital archives could be monetized without alienating fans. The ebooks were inexpensive, marketed as bite-sized additions to the Potter canon, and widely accessible. They appealed both to hardcore fans hungry for lore and to casual readers curious about Hogwarts beyond the novels. For some, however, Pottermore Presents felt bittersweet. What had once been a reward for exploration, a secret essay unlocked in a digital chapter, was now a commodity. The sense of discovery gave way to convenience. Where fans had once whispered about McGonagall's lost love or the Bloody Baron's tragic past, now the stories could be purchased and read in an afternoon. The lore was still magical, but the delivery was transactional. Still, the ebooks were successful. They introduced Rowling's Pottermore writings to millions who had never used the site, and they cemented Pottermore Publishing as more than a distribution channel for the 7 novels. It was now a curator, an editor, a storyteller in its own right. In hindsight, Pottermore Presents was a symbolic moment. It marked the end of the treasure hunt era and the beginning of Pottermore's role as a digital archive and publisher. What once lived behind glowing hotspots now lived on e-readers around the world. The magic was preserved, if not quite in the same form. By the mid-2010s, Pottermore had completed a quiet transformation. What began as an experiment in interactive storytelling and gamified discovery was now evolving into something simpler, a digital archive and news hub for the wizarding world. The adventure was fading, but the knowledge remained. The signs were unmistakable. Features that once defined the site, potion brewing, spell dueling, house cup competitions, were gone. The illustrated, chapter-by-chapter journey through the 7 novels was dismantled, replaced by a streamlined homepage and navigation system. Pottermore no longer presented itself as a game or a living Hogwarts replica. Instead, it rebranded as the official repository for all things Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. At the center of this new identity were Rowling's essays, repurposed as articles. No longer hidden in interactive hotspots, the lore now appeared in clearly labeled sections, often accompanied by polished editorial design and illustrations. Topics ranged from deep dives into Hogwarts history to character spotlights and timelines of magical events. Fans could browse freely, without the need to click through scenes or solve puzzles. Pottermore had become less of a digital adventure and more of a reference library. This shift reflected a broader cultural moment. By 2016, the Wizarding World was expanding again. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was arriving in theaters, Cursed Child had premiered on stage, and Warner Brothers was consolidating the Harry Potter brand under the banner of Wizarding World. Pottermore adapted by becoming the central hub for official announcements, news articles, and fan engagement. Its role was no longer to simulate Hogwarts but to connect fans with the evolving franchise. Quizzes emerged as the platform's most enduring feature. After the Sorting Hat and Wand ceremonies, Pottermore introduced the long-awaited Patronus Quiz, which went viral upon release in 2016. Fans flooded social media with their results, comparing otters, foxes, and stags with the fervor once reserved for sorting allegiances. These quizzes were simpler than potion brewing but far more scalable. They created bursts of engagement, drove traffic, and aligned with modern fandom's appetite for quick, shareable experiences. Yet for longtime users, this transformation was bittersweet. Pottermore's early magic had been rooted in discovery and immersion. Now it felt closer to a magazine, curated and polished but lacking the thrill of exploration. The castle had become an archive. Where fans once brewed potions late into the night, they now read articles about Hogwarts professors or speculated about the latest film. The emotional shift was profound. Pottermore was no longer a place to play in the Wizarding World, but to read about it. From a strategic perspective, the move was pragmatic. Maintaining complex interactive mechanics was costly and technically demanding, while serving as a news and lore hub was sustainable, efficient, and aligned with Warner Brothers' global strategy. Pottermore could now function as the franchise's official voice online, authoritative and adaptable. Still, the transformation revealed a fundamental truth about digital fandom: magic thrives on participation. By stepping back from its interactive roots, Pottermore traded enchantment for stability. It gained longevity but lost some of the wonder that had defined its early years. And yet, even as its form changed, its essence endured. Pottermore had become an archive, a vault where Rowling's writings lived, where official canon was guarded, and where fans could find their place in the expanding universe. The adventure might have ended, but the story was still being told. From the moment Pottermore launched, it carried with it an unusual weight. Authority. Unlike fan wikis, unofficial forums, or even scholarly analyses, Pottermore was not speculation or interpretation, it was Rowling's own voice, delivered directly to readers. That made the platform not just a fan hub, but a source of canon, reshaping how fans understood the boundaries of the Wizarding World. The new writings that debuted on Pottermore were unlike bonus material in most franchises. These weren't throwaway trivia pieces or deleted chapters, they were expansions that often changed how readers viewed characters, institutions, and magical history. Professor McGonagall's tragic past, the origins of the Marauders map, the true story of the Bloody Baron and the Grey Lady, all arrived on Pottermore, instantly adopted as part of the official record. This created a new kind of fan literacy. To be fully conversant in Harry Potter, it was no longer enough to read the 7 books. One also had to explore Pottermore, dig up the essays, and absorb Rowling's scattered revelations. Canon had become transmedia, not bound to a single medium, but distributed across books, films, interviews, and now a digital platform. For fans who craved completeness, Pottermore became essential. But this authority also sparked debate. Some argued that Rowling's additions enriched the world, giving depth to characters and contexts that had been left in the margins. Others worried that the steady stream of new canon threatened to destabilize the original text. If lore was being released piecemeal online, sometimes years after the books ended, where did the stories truly begin and end? Was a web essay about wand lore as weighty as the events of Goblet of Fire? The tension became more pronounced as Rowling began addressing contemporary issues through Pottermore and other channels. For example, clarifications about diversity in the wizarding world, such as the revelation that Hogwarts had students of various backgrounds not highlighted in the novels, were welcomed by some but criticized by others as retroactive inclusion. Similarly, the announcement that Dumbledore was gay, confirmed in interviews and echoed in Pottermore writings, fueled debates about the responsibilities of authors in expanding their worlds after publication. For fans, these debates underscored a central paradox. Pottermore gave them direct access to the author's vision, but it also blurred the line between finished art and ongoing commentary. The 7 novels had a closed, crystalline form. Pottermore introduced a living, mutable canon that shifted with every new essay. Some embraced this fluidity, while others longed for the certainty of the books alone. From a business and cultural perspective, Pottermore's authority was invaluable. It positioned the platform as the official arbiter of canon. Where fan communities once argued endlessly over unanswered questions, Pottermore could settle debates with a single essay. This gave it enduring relevance even as its interactivity waned. Fans might not log into Duel anymore, but they logged in to learn the truth. And yet, the truth itself was no longer static. By becoming an archive of Rowling's evolving thoughts, Pottermore reminded fans that the wizarding world was not fixed in amber. It was alive, expanding, and sometimes contested, even by its creator. In this way, Pottermore didn't just distribute canon, it transformed what canon meant in the digital age. The experiment had profound implications for literature and fandom. For the first time, an author of Rowling's stature was publishing new canon outside traditional books, using a digital platform to drip-feed history, philosophy, and character studies. Pottermore became less a companion to the novels and more a living commentary on them. A library where the story never quite ended. For readers who wanted the last word, Pottermore promised that. But for those who cherished the ambiguity of the original novels, the site represented something more complicated, a reminder that stories, once released into the world, take on lives of their own. Pottermore gave Rowling the power to reclaim and expand her world, but it also highlighted the limits of authorial control in the face of a fandom that was already writing, imagining, and debating on its own. Among the many revelations Pottermore delivered, few carried the same chill as the essay on Azkaban. Readers of the books had known it only as a grim prison guarded by soul-sucking dementors, the place where Sirius Black was unjustly confined and Bellatrix Lestrange carved her madness into the walls. But in Pottermore, Rowling opened the doors to its history, and what lay behind them shocked even the most hardened fans. The essay explained that Azkaban had not begun as a prison at all. Centuries earlier, it had been the fortress of a dark sorcerer who thrived on secrecy and fear. Shrouded in enchantments, the island was invisible to muggles and avoided even by magical folk. Its early master filled the halls with dark experiments, leaving behind a residue of malevolence so potent that it lingered long after his death. When the Ministry of Magic first stumbled upon the place, they were horrified, not only by the remnants of dark magic but by the sinister creatures that had gathered there, Dementors. This revelation reframed the prison itself. Azkaban was not simply a place chosen for convenience or security, it was a monument to magical corruption, steeped in history that predated the Ministry's reforms. The choice to use it as a prison, an act made out of political expediency, became a moral compromise, one that haunted the wizarding world ever after. To contain criminals within Azkaban was to exploit the very darkness it embodied. Fans responded with fascination and unease. Suddenly, the cruelty of the Dementors wasn't just an unfortunate side effect, it was a deliberate choice by the Ministry to harness forces it could barely control. What had been a backdrop in the novels now became a critique of governance, punishment, and the willingness of institutions to sacrifice morality for efficiency. In community discussions, fans debated the implications. Did this make the Ministry complicit in evil? Were prisoners victims of the system as much as their crimes? For a franchise often dismissed as a children's literature, Pottermore's essay on Azkaban pushed the story into darker, more political territory. It revealed how Rowling could use the digital platform not only to expand her world but to deepen its ethical complexity. The Origins of Azkaban also highlighted Pottermore's unique strength, the ability to release lore that might have slowed down the pace of a novel but enriched the larger universe. In a traditional book, this history would have read like exposition. Online, it became an essay, something fans could study, debate, and archive. Pottermore had become, in effect, a scholarly companion to its own fictional world. In the end, the Azkaban essay exemplified what made Pottermore's canon drop so powerful. They weren't trivia. They were revelations that reshaped the moral architecture of the wizarding world, forcing readers to see familiar elements in new light. If the Sorting Hat-shaped identity and Chocolate Frog cards expanded culture, the lore of Azkaban reminded fans that the wizarding world wasn't only whimsical, it was haunted by history, choices, and consequences. If the Sorting Hat defined who you were at Hogwarts, the Patronus quiz revealed who you were at your core. Few moments in the Harry Potter books carried the same symbolic power as conjuring a Patronus, the silvery animal born from one's happiest memories, a personal embodiment of resilience and hope. In 2016, Pottermore transformed that spell into a digital ritual, and it quickly became one of the platform's most iconic features. The Patronus quiz was unlike the sorting ceremony or wand selection. It wasn't a simple list of multiple-choice questions, it was an immersive experience designed to feel like magic itself. Users were guided through a shadowy, dreamlike forest, words and images flashing across the screen in quick succession. The choices were instinctive. Sun or moon, blade or shield, lead or follow. The pace was relentless, encouraging gut reactions rather than overthinking. In this way, the quiz captured the essence of a Patronus, a reflection of instinct, not calculation. At the end, the forest cleared and a silvery form emerged, your Patronus, rendered in glowing animation. For some, it was noble and expected, a stag, a wolf, a phoenix. For others, it was surprising, even baffling, a salmon, a mole, or a weasel. Pottermore's canon declared that every Patronus had meaning, even the most obscure, though Rowling offered little explanation for many. Fans embraced the ambiguity, rushing to forums to speculate about the symbolism of each result. The launch of the Patronus quiz sparked a frenzy on social media. Millions of fans shared their results with pride or disbelief, comparing animals and debating their significance. Hashtags like #ExpectoPatronum trended worldwide. The quiz became not just a Pottermore feature but a cultural event, reigniting interest in the platform after years of declining engagement. For many fans, the experience felt deeply personal. A Patronus wasn't just a fun alignment test, it was framed as an expression of one's inner self, a shield against despair. Some users even described their results as comforting or empowering, interpreting them as insights into their personality or struggles. The quiz bridged the gap between fandom and self-discovery, much like the Sorting Hat had, but with an emotional resonance unique to the concept of a Patronus. From a business perspective, the Patronus quiz demonstrated Pottermore's ability to adapt to the viral age. Unlike potion brewing or dueling, which required time and technical upkeep, the Patronus quiz was simple to maintain but endlessly shareable. It fit neatly into the rhythms of modern fandom, quick, visual, and social. More importantly, it extended Rowling's canon into interactive form. Your Patronus wasn't just headcanon anymore, it was official, chosen by the same system Rowling approved. Still, the quiz was not without controversy. Some fans were disappointed by their patroness, arguing that the results felt random or poorly matched to their personalities. Others longed for more explanation of obscure animals, criticizing the lack of detailed lore. And as with the sorting ceremony, some users tried to game the system by retaking the quiz under different accounts, searching for the patroness they felt they deserved. Yet, these debates only underscored its impact. The Patroness quiz had become a rite of passage, a digital echo of Harry's lessons with Lupin, scaled to millions. It wasn't just about conjuring a glowing animal on a screen, it was about participating in one of the saga's most powerful metaphors, the belief that even in darkness, light could be summoned from within. In the arc of Pottermore's history, the Patroness quiz marked both a revival and a revelation. It reminded fans of the platform's unique power to blend canon with experience, storytelling with identity. It may not have restored all the enchantment of early Pottermore, but for a fleeting moment, it gave fans something they had longed for, the chance to cast their own spell. At its core, Pottermore was never just about content or features, it was about people. For millions of readers who had grown up with Harry Potter, the platform became a new meeting ground, a digital Hogwarts where fans could see themselves not just as readers of a story, but as members of a living community. The sorting ceremony, wand selection, and later the Patroness quiz gave fans a shared language of identity. To declare yourself a Gryffindor or a Ravenclaw on Pottermore was more than trivia, it was a badge of belonging. Online forums, both official and unofficial, filled with common rooms where housemates exchanged tips, encouragement, and friendly rivalries. These identities spilled across platforms, Twitter bios, Tumblr tags, and Instagram captions proudly bore house crests as if they were family sigils. The House Cup amplified this communal spirit. Though the competition was digital, the emotions it generated were tangible. Slytherin celebrated their first cup victory like underdogs who had finally claimed respect, Ravenclaws rallied as quiet champions of knowledge and strategy, Hufflepuffs bonded over their reputation as the hard-working heart of the community. Pottermore's design made fans feel not just like players, but like teammates contributing to something bigger than themselves. Even outside of competitions, the sense of community flourished. Pottermore's lore drops gave fans shared topics of discussion, fueling debates about character backstories, magical history, and ethics in the wizarding world. When McGonagall's essay was released, fans across continents collectively gasped at her heartbreak. When the Patroness quiz launched, they compared results like students comparing Charm's homework. The site created synchronized moments of discovery, where millions experienced new lore at the same time, digital equivalents of midnight book releases. Importantly, Pottermore was global. Unlike book tours or film premieres, which were often limited to certain regions, Pottermore lived online and was accessible to anyone with an internet connection. This allowed fans from Brazil to bond with fans from India, South Africa, or Poland, united not by geography but by a shared love of Hogwarts. Language barriers faded in the face of house allegiance and magical identity. For many, it was their first experience of belonging to a truly international fandom. The platform also shaped fandom creativity. House pride fueled fan art, memes, and fan fiction, much of it inspired directly by Pottermore features. Entire Tumblr communities sprang up around obscure patron uses. Cosplayers incorporated their digital wand assignments into conventions. Etsy shops sold merchandise designed around Pottermore quizzes and lore, blurring the line between the official and the fan-made. Pottermore was not only shaping identity, it was shaping culture. Of course, the community wasn't without friction. Rivalries sometimes turned toxic, with fans accusing other houses of cheating in the House Cup or debating the fairness of quiz results. Others criticized the lack of moderation in forums, where passionate debates could veer into hostility. But even these tensions underscored how deeply Pottermore mattered. People fought over it because it felt real, because they believed their digital Hogwarts was worth defending. From a cultural perspective, Pottermore proved that fandom is not just about consuming stories but about participating in them. It gave fans official tools to anchor their identities and communal rituals to reinforce those bonds. For a generation that had once lined up at midnight to buy the books, Pottermore offered a new kind of gathering space, not a bookstore queue, but a digital common room where friendships could spark across oceans. In the end, the most enduring legacy of Pottermore may not have been its essays or its mechanics, but the communities it forged. The Sorting Hat, the Patronus, the House Cup, all were scaffolding for something deeper, the realization that the magic of Harry Potter had always been about connection. Pottermore simply gave that connection a digital form. By the mid-2010s, Pottermore stood at a curious crossroads. The castle that had once been alive with bubbling cauldrons and clashing wands now echoed with quieter sounds, the murmur of quizzes being taken, the rustle of essays being read, the occasional cheer when a new feature was unveiled. It was no longer the bustling school it had once aspired to be. Gone were the hours spent collecting potion ingredients or dueling strangers in real time. In their place came sharper, more polished experiences, streamlined quizzes, richer lore drops, and features designed not for endless immersion but for moments of impact. Fans felt the shift. Some mourned the loss of the playground, others embraced the new library, appreciating its focus on canon and discovery. And yet, beneath the silence, something stirred. The Patronus quiz, launched in 2016, would prove that Pottermore could still ignite a spark of wonder powerful enough to ripple across the globe. This interlude was a breath before the storm. A pause in the great hall, where torches flickered and shadows stretched long. Pottermore was changing. Its role in the fandom was no longer to replicate Hogwarts, but to offer windows into the wizarding world that were intimate, personal, and viral in reach. The next chapter would remind fans why they had come here in the first place, to find the magic waiting inside themselves. If Pottermore had once promised a digital Hogwarts, by 2016 it had transformed into something else entirely, a machine for moments. And among those moments, none resonated more deeply than the Patronus quiz. For a platform that had been struggling to hold on to its audience, this feature wasn't just another update, it was a resurrection. The anticipation was immense. Hints had circulated for months that a Patronus feature was coming. Fans speculated endlessly. How would it work? Would there be dozens of possibilities, or hundreds? Would rare patron uses exist? And most importantly, what would theirs be? The very nature of the Patronus, tied to one's inner self, imbued the quiz with more gravity than the Sorting Hat or Wand Selection ever could. When it finally launched, the Patronus quiz became an event. Fans described the experience as hypnotic, guided through a glowing, twilight forest where words flashed across the screen, demanding instant responses. The time limit was deliberate. It felt like a test of instinct, not intellect, an echo of how the Patronus charm itself required emotion rather than calculation. The result emerged dramatically, a shimmering creature bounding through the shadows, a fox, a stallion, a thestral, or something far more unusual. The impact was immediate and global. Within hours, social media was flooded with Patronus reveals. Twitter timelines glittered with glowing animals. YouTube filled with reaction videos of fans gasping at their results. Tumblr became a canvas for Patronus aesthetics. Fan art, gift sets, and essays speculating about the meaning of each animal. The #expectopatronum trended worldwide. Unlike earlier Pottermore features, the Patronus quiz tapped perfectly into the age of shareability. Results were quick to screenshot, easy to post, and endlessly debatable. Fans compared patron uses the way school children once compared trading cards. Some reveled in the pride of receiving majestic creatures like stags, dragons, or wolves. Others found humor in less imposing results, salmon, hedgehogs, or small birds. Entire memes blossomed from the unexpected outcomes, and Pottermore itself became a cultural touchpoint again. More than entertainment, however, the quiz felt deeply personal. Fans interpreted their Patronus results as windows into their soul, an affirmation of hidden strengths or a reflection of unspoken struggles. In a time when personality quizzes and digital identity were already booming, Pottermore had created one with real emotional weight. It wasn't just fun, it was canon, officially sanctioned by J.K. Rowling. To receive your Patronus wasn't a headcanon exercise, it was a declaration from the wizarding world itself. The phenomenon also reignited discussions about what made a Patronus meaningful. Why did Rowling choose to include certain animals and exclude others? What did a rare or unusual Patronus imply? Could one's Patronus change, as Rowling hinted it could under extraordinary emotional circumstances? The quiz left more questions than answers, but those questions sustained the fandom's energy for months. From a business perspective, it was a masterstroke. The Patronus quiz revitalized Pottermore's brand, drove massive traffic to the site, and reinserted the platform into cultural conversations. It was the kind of viral moment most digital publishers dreamed of, a blend of interactivity, identity, and storytelling that spread faster than any marketing campaign could. And yet, the quiz also marked something bittersweet. It underscored Pottermore's shift away from being a sprawling, explorable Hogwarts and toward being a platform of punctuated experiences. Fans flocked to the quiz, but after the excitement faded, many drifted away once more, awaiting the next moment. The Patronus phenomenon was proof of Pottermore's magic, but also a reminder of its limits. Still, for millions of fans, the memory endures. The night their Patronus revealed itself, whether it was a noble stag or a mischievous squirrel, was a night when the screen shimmered with magic. Pottermore had once again reminded them what it felt like to believe. The Patronus quiz had electrified the fandom, but its brilliance also cast long shadows. Once the initial wave of excitement faded, fans began to recognize the fault lines that ran beneath Pottermore's foundation. For one, the quiz revealed how fragile the site had become in terms of stability and accessibility. On launch day, the servers buckled under the unprecedented traffic, leading to long queues and frustrated players. This wasn't the first time Pottermore had struggled under its own weight, but the Patronus quiz magnified the issue. It proved that Pottermore could still summon a global audience, yet it couldn't always hold them. The quiz also raised questions about depth. The sorting and wand ceremonies had launched entire layers of interactivity in earlier versions of the site, supported by common room competitions and potion brewing. The Patronus quiz, by contrast, was a singular burst of magic, but with little to anchor fans afterward. Some users longed for more lore about their specific Patronus, perhaps essays explaining each animal's symbolism or even in-game features where patron users could interact. But Pottermore rarely followed through, leaving many to feel that the experience ended as abruptly as it began. Criticism, too, grew louder in corners of the fandom. Some argued that the Patronus quiz relied too heavily on instinctual answers and didn't provide enough transparency about how results were generated. Others noted that Rowling's authorial voice, once so present in essays and lore drops, seemed increasingly absent. Pottermore, in this period, felt both powerful and hollow, capable of igniting a frenzy, but struggling to sustain it. Yet, even with these cracks showing, the Patronus quiz carried symbolic weight. It was a reminder that fans still craved official spaces to express their wizarding identities. It proved that Pottermore still had the ability to unite the global fandom in synchronized wonder. But it also underscored a growing truth, that the site was no longer evolving in a way that matched its community's hunger. In this tension between momentary brilliance and structural fragility, the seeds of transformation were planted. Pottermore could not remain as it was forever. The wizarding world was expanding through films, stage plays, and new publishing ventures. To remain relevant, Pottermore itself would have to change, shedding its old name, reshaping its purpose, and stepping into a new identity. The dawn of rebranding was approaching. By the late 2010s, Pottermore had become both a triumph and a paradox. It had delivered unforgettable moments, the sorting, the Patronus quiz, Rowling's lore essays, but it had also outgrown itself. The site was no longer the sprawling experiment in digital storytelling that had launched with such promise in 2011. Instead, it had become a hybrid, part archive, part quiz hub, part news outlet. For fans, it was valuable, but increasingly fragmented. For Warner Brothers and J.K. Rowling's team, it was an identity problem waiting to be solved. The answer came in 2019, when Pottermore quietly shed its name and re-emerged as WizardingWorld.com. The change was more than cosmetic, it was a strategic shift. Where Pottermore had been a stan, DAL1 digital companion, Wizarding World positioned itself as the official umbrella brand for everything tied to Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. It was a unifying front, designed not just to preserve the fandom but to expand it in step with new media ventures. The transition reflected a recognition of scale. By this point, the Wizarding World franchise had grown far beyond the 7 Harry Potter novels. Fantastic Beasts films were in theaters, the stage play Harry Potter and the Cursed Child was drawing crowds worldwide, and merchandise empires were flourishing in theme parks. Pottermore, with its intimate focus on lore drops and quizzes, felt too narrow for such a sprawling franchise. Wizarding World, in contrast, could serve as the nexus point, a centralized hub where fans could engage with every aspect of the brand. From a design perspective, Wizarding World emphasized polish and accessibility. Gone were the labyrinthine chapter explorations of Pottermore's early years. In their place stood clean layouts, curated articles, official announcements, and a more seamless integration with other platforms, including a dedicated Wizarding World app. Features like the sorting ceremony and Patronus quiz carried over, ensuring continuity, but they were streamlined to fit a broader ecosystem of experiences. The rebranding also introduced the fan club, positioning engagement in a more structured way. Membership allowed users to collect digital badges, receive newsletters, and access exclusive content. The move signaled a shift from Pottermore's early ethos of playful discovery toward a modern model of loyalty programs and brand management. Fans were no longer just explorers of Rowling's world, they were customers and community members in a global franchise. Reaction to the change was mixed. Some longtime fans mourned the loss of Pottermore's quirkier, more experimental spirit. They missed the feeling of wandering through the virtual castle, uncovering secrets tucked into its digital walls. Others embraced Wizarding World as a necessary evolution, sleeker, more comprehensive, and better aligned with the realities of the entertainment industry. The emotional intimacy of Pottermore gave way to a more corporate sheen, but one that promised sustainability. The transformation also reflected a larger truth: Pottermore had always been caught between being a digital playground and a corporate brand platform. Its rebranding resolved the tension by embracing the latter. Wizarding World was not about wandering Hogwarts halls in pixelated form, it was about anchoring a billion-dollar franchise in a single, recognizable home. And yet, the echoes of Pottermore remained. The sorting, the wand selection, the Patronus, these digital rites of passage carried forward, allowing fans to maintain their Hogwarts identity even in the new space. Wizarding World might have been born from corporate necessity, but it still carried embers of the enchantment that Pottermore had first sparked. In this evolution, the story of Pottermore reached both an end and a continuation. The castle had been rebuilt into a city square, less mysterious, more structured, but still alive with magic. Fans would step into Wizarding World carrying with them the memories of their first wand, their first house, their first shimmering Patronus. For Pottermore, the metamorphosis was complete. With the unveiling of Wizarding World, the Harry Potter digital experience entered a new phase, one shaped less by experimental storytelling and more by integrated brand strategy. At the heart of this transition was the launch of the Wizarding World app, a mobile-first platform designed to serve fans wherever they were. The app represented a departure from Pottermore's early web-based interactivity. Instead of a virtual Hogwarts, fans now had a sleek interface in their pockets: quizzes, daily articles, lore essays, and updates about films, books, and merchandise. The app's design emphasized personalization. By logging in, users could keep their sorting, wand, and Patronus results tied to their digital identity, no longer scattered experiences, but a cohesive fan profile. This continuity gave Wizarding World an edge. It carried forward the rituals that made Pottermore special, while embedding them in a more modern, portable framework. Another key innovation was the introduction of Wizarding World Gold, a premium subscription tier. For an annual fee, members received exclusive perks, collectible pin badges, behind-the-scenes features, discounts on merchandise, and access to special content. It was the franchise's boldest move toward monetizing fan loyalty directly, borrowing from the logic of subscription models that had flourished in the age of Netflix and Disney+. The timing was no accident. By 2019, streaming had become the defining mode of media consumption. Franchises were not only selling films or merchandise, they were selling ecosystems. The Wizarding World app aimed to ensure that Harry Potter fans had a central hub of engagement, much like Marvel had Disney+ or Star Wars had Galaxy's Edge in theme parks. It was about unifying a fan base across generations and formats, ensuring that the brand remained ever-present, adaptable, and profitable. Reception to the app and Gold subscription, however, was mixed. While fans appreciated the convenience of having sorting and Patronus quizzes readily accessible, some felt the app lacked the depth and magic of Pottermore's more exploratory design. The Gold program drew criticism as a cash grab, especially from fans who had grown accustomed to Pottermore's free offerings. For some, the pivot to a subscription model highlighted the corporate nature of Wizarding World more starkly than ever before. Still, the app's launch solidified the franchise's digital future. It wasn't about reconstructing Hogwarts Online anymore, it was about extending the Wizarding World brand into a lifestyle, woven seamlessly into fans' daily lives. A notification from the app could remind you of a character's birthday, offer a new quiz to share with friends, or announce a film release. In this way, Wizarding World reimagined itself as not just a hub of lore but a living, breathing digital companion to fandom itself. The app symbolized the moment when Harry Potter fully embraced the ecosystem era, standing shoulder to shoulder with the other mega franchises of the 21st century. For all its critics and imperfections, it represented an undeniable truth: the magic of Pottermore had not vanished, it had been repackaged for a world where attention was fragmented, loyalty was monetized, and stories lived as much in apps as they did in books. When the Wizarding World brand took root, it did more than reshape the digital architecture of Harry Potter, it reshaped the fandom itself. For nearly a decade, Pottermore had been the strange little castle that fans could wander through, a place that felt like it belonged to them as much as to Rowling's team. Wizarding World, by contrast, felt curated, polished, and branded. It was no longer a digital experiment, it was an arm of a franchise. That distinction altered how fans related to it. Some welcomed the change with open arms. They saw Wizarding World as a professional, modern hub that finally reflected the scale of the Harry Potter phenomenon. The quizzes were still there, their digital identity remained intact, and now everything, from movie updates to merchandise, was in one place. For younger fans who had not experienced early Pottermore, Wizarding World felt natural, even sleek. It mirrored the style of other fandom hubs like Star Wars or Marvel, and in that way, Harry Potter appeared to be keeping pace with the times. But for others, the shift cut deeper. They mourned the end of Pottermore's experimental spirit, the quiet lore essays, the odd interactivity, the sensation of clicking through a digital forest to uncover secrets. To these fans, Wizarding World felt like a corporate takeover, stripping away the eccentricity that had made Pottermore feel magical. Online, forums and fan groups debated whether Wizarding World was truly for the community, or simply for the franchise's bottom line. This tension reflected a larger change in fandom itself. In the early 2010s, digital fan spaces often felt grassroots, messy, and personal. By the late 2010s, fandoms were increasingly shaped by official corporate platforms. Where once fans had discovered Pottermore through a hidden beta key hunt, now they downloaded an app and signed into a branded fan club. The intimacy of discovery was replaced with the polish of a membership program. For some, this was progress. For others, it was a reminder that the fandom was no longer just theirs, it was a commodity. Yet even as criticisms mounted, Wizarding World continued to thrive. Fans still took pride in their house, compared their patron uses, and shared their wand results on social media. The very features carried over from Pottermore kept a thread of continuity alive. What had begun as a playful experiment in digital storytelling had become a global fandom identity system, one that many could not imagine being without. The reactions, in the end, revealed a truth about the Harry Potter community: it was vast, diverse, and impossible to please in a single stroke. For some, Wizarding World was a betrayal of Pottermore's heart. For others, it was simply the next chapter in a fandom that had always been evolving. But in either case, the conversation itself proved the same point Pottermore had always carried: this world was alive because its fans cared enough to argue about it, to question it, and to keep it alive long after the last page of the books had closed. Amidst the debates about Wizarding World's polish and purpose, a quiet nostalgia began to spread. In forums, blogs, and YouTube retrospectives, fans revisited memories of Pottermore in its earliest form. They remembered the thrill of clicking through animated book scenes, collecting potion ingredients, and unlocking Rowling's hidden essays like treasures buried within the code. For many, those memories weren't just about lore, they were about a feeling of discovery that corporate sheen could never quite replicate. This nostalgia became its own subculture. Screenshots of Pottermore's original interface circulated as digital keepsakes, while fan-made recreations attempted to rebuild the lost experience. In this sense, Pottermore lived on, not just as a brand absorbed into Wizarding World, but as a ghostly presence haunting it. Fans who had grown up with the site now look back at it as a formative part of their online childhood, much like early YouTube or Neopets. At the same time, new fans, those introduced directly to Wizarding World, were baffled by the sentimentality. To them, the app and site offered convenience, polish, and relevance. The disconnect revealed a generational divide within the fandom: one half clung to the eccentricity of the past, while the other embraced the streamlined present. What united both sides, however, was an unspoken truth: Pottermore had mattered. It had set a precedent for what digital fandoms could look like, and its echoes refused to fade, even as Wizarding World surged forward. The castle had changed form, but its foundations remained beneath the ground. Looking back, Pottermore was never just a website. It was a prototype, a test case for how stories could live in the digital age beyond their original form. Its success was not measured in perfect execution but in ambition. At a time when most franchise websites served as marketing platforms or simple fan hubs, Pottermore attempted something radically different: to extend a fictional world into an interactive, living experience. The lessons it left behind were many. Pottermore demonstrated that fans were eager for participation, not just consumption. Sorting into a house or discovering one's wand became more than quizzes; they were identity markers, rituals that fans carried into everyday life. That sense of personalization spread far beyond Harry Potter. Other franchises began to adopt similar models, offering personality-driven entry points into their worlds, from superhero alignments to role-based tests in video games. Pottermore had shown that fans didn't just want to read stories, they wanted to locate themselves inside them. At the same time, the site exposed the challenges of sustaining such immersive projects. Its early interactive features, while beloved, proved resource-intensive and difficult to maintain. The eventual shift toward quizzes and lore drops revealed the tension between artistry and scalability, a problem every transmedia project would grapple with in the years that followed. Pottermore's arc illustrated how digital storytelling must balance creativity with practicality, especially when managing a global fandom. Its legacy also lay in bridging two eras of the internet. The early 2010s were still shaped by a spirit of experimentation, where new platforms could feel like secret gardens. By the end of the decade, digital spaces were dominated by corporate ecosystems, apps, and subscription models. Pottermore sat at the threshold of these two worlds, born as an experiment in wonder, transformed into a branded fan platform. Its story mirrored the broader transformation of the web itself. For fans, Pottermore's impact was deeply personal. It became a place of memory, where one's first sorting or Patronus quiz felt as significant as a favorite chapter from the books. Those digital rites of passage entered fandom canon as surely as the lore Rowling had written. Even after the site's dissolution into Wizarding World, the rituals remained, proving that Pottermore's greatest achievement was not its technology but the traditions it gave fans to carry forward. In this way, Pottermore's broader legacy endures as both inspiration and cautionary tale. It revealed the possibilities of immersive, lore-driven digital storytelling, while also highlighting the limits of sustaining such visions. Most of all, it proved that a fictional world could thrive beyond its original medium, not by dictating new stories, but by giving fans a mirror in which to find their own place within the magic. There is a hush that falls when a great story pauses, the kind of silence that lingers after the turning of a final page. Pottermore, in its many forms, existed in that liminal space, between the books that had already been written and the world that fans refused to let fade. It was both bridge and experiment, both archive and playground. By the time it had transformed into Wizarding World, much of its eccentric character had been sanded down, yet the echoes remained. Fans carried them forward not in the form of screenshots or preserved quizzes alone, but in memory, the thrill of receiving a house letter, the surprise of discovering a forgotten corner of lore, the sense of being part of something vast yet personal. Pottermore was never perfect. It stumbled, it restructured, it disappointed as often as it dazzled. But the fact that it was remembered at all speaks to something deeper. It mattered. It shaped how a generation of readers thought about belonging to a story, and how digital platforms could become sites of community as much as of content. Now, standing between its legacy and its afterlife, the world looks back not with bitterness but with complexity. Pottermore was fleeting, yet enduring, flawed, yet formative. It showed what happens when magic and memory collide in the space of the internet, leaving behind something that outlives its code. In the end, Pottermore was never just about discovering wandwoods or dueling in a digital great hall. It was about the attempt to translate a beloved story into an experience that felt alive, an act of faith that readers would follow Rowling's world into new mediums, and, in doing so, shape it themselves. For nearly a decade, that faith was rewarded in ways both unexpected and profound. The castle of Pottermore may no longer stand in its original form, but its foundations remain scattered across the fandom. Every Patronus shared online, every house quiz result turned into a point of pride, every whispered memory of unlocking a lost bit of lore, all of these are fragments of a digital experiment that became more than its creators imagined. In a way, the site succeeded not because it endured, but because it embedded itself into the rituals of the Harry Potter community. Its transformation into Wizarding World was not the end, but a continuation, one that underscored how fandom itself evolves. Pottermore represented an age of wonder and experimentation on the internet, while Wizarding World reflected an era of consolidation, branding, and global reach. Each era had its flaws, each its triumphs. Together, they charted a path that showed how fantasy could move seamlessly between page, screen, and digital space. For all its quirks and missteps, Pottermore's greatest legacy was its invitation, the sense that readers could step beyond the text and find themselves within the story. That invitation remains alive long after the original site has faded into memory. And so, the tale of Pottermore ends much as Harry's own story did, not with a final closing, but with the quiet knowledge that magic never truly ends. It lingers, waiting to be rediscovered, reshaped, and reimagined in every fan who still believes in the world beyond the screen. The Harry Potter series, in its original form, thrived on the intimacy of reading. Each book was a private journey, a dialogue between Rowling's voice and the reader's imagination. The films, by contrast, translated that imagination into spectacle, shared, visual, and definitive. Yet Pottermore introduced a third mode of engagement, neither passive consumption nor traditional reading, but active participation in the unfolding of the wizarding world. In this digital castle, the universe expanded not by adding new plotlines or sequels, but by peeling back corners of lore that had gone unexplored. The essays on wand lore, magical history, and character backstories felt less like narratives and more like fragments of a living archive. Fans were not just revisiting Harry's journey, they were wandering through a library of forgotten rooms. What made this distinct from books and films was the form itself. A novel follows a linear path, and a film compresses story into visual time. Pottermore fractured the experience into clickable choices, exploratory navigation, and hidden secrets. In doing so, it created an illusion of discovery, of being the first to unearth something within the canon. That sensation of agency, even if carefully curated, gave Pottermore its magic. For the first time, the wizarding world was not confined to the page or the screen. It was an environment to be entered, explored, and shaped by the reader's curiosity. This shift marked a profound moment in franchise storytelling. The wizarding world was no longer a story told to its audience, but a world opened for them. When Pottermore launched, it was less a website and more a cultural experiment. Could a digital space act as both an official extension of canon and a playground for fandom? This was the question at its heart, though it was never asked aloud. The early 2010s were an age of online forums, fan fiction archives, and sprawling communities that thrived without official sanction. Pottermore arrived as an attempt to gather that energy and place it within an official, Rowling-approved frame. For many fans, this was thrilling. Instead of piecing together scraps of lore from interviews or conventions, they now had a sanctioned platform where Rowling herself released essays and backstories. Pottermore was not just about reading, it was about belonging. With sorting hat quizzes and house cup competitions, the site attempted to simulate the camaraderie and rivalry of Hogwarts itself. But therein lay the experiment's paradox: fandom thrives on freedom, while Pottermore thrived on curation. Fans could wander through scenes and discover tidbits, but they could not create within the platform. Unlike fan fiction, there was no space for alternate imaginings. Unlike forums, there was no organic conversation. Pottermore was a fandom space designed without fan agency. Still, the experiment was groundbreaking. It tested the boundaries between creator and community, between passive readers and active participants. Even in its controlled environment, Pottermore acknowledged something essential: that the Harry Potter phenomenon was no longer just about stories, but about shared identity. In that recognition, the platform mirrored the cultural shifts of the internet age, when stories ceased to end at the last page and instead spilled outward, shaped by the hands of those who loved them. When Pottermore opened its gates in 2011, it was not merely another branded website. It arrived as a bold test case for how a major cultural phenomenon could transition into the digital era. Fans had already been living in online spaces for years, on forums like MuggleNet, in fan fiction archives, and in sprawling communities on LiveJournal and early Tumblr. These were places of creation, debate, and boundless imagination. Pottermore's challenge was to channel that unruly energy into an official, curated space sanctioned by J.K. Rowling herself. At first, the promise was intoxicating. Pottermore offered what no fan site could: exclusive lore, straight from the author. Essays on wand lore, character backstories, and magical history made the platform feel like a living extension of canon. For fans used to scraping together fragments from interviews or companion books, the idea that Rowling herself would publish directly to a digital platform gave Pottermore an aura of authority. It was as though the fandom had been granted its own restricted section of the Hogwarts library. The site also introduced gamified features designed to mimic the experience of entering the wizarding world. Sorting into houses, winning points through potion brewing and spell casting games, and competing in the House Cup made Pottermore feel participatory. No longer were readers just observers, they were students at Hogwarts, with identities anchored by digital rituals. For many, the Sorting Hat quiz in particular became a rite of passage, conferring legitimacy on long-debated personal affiliations. Yet, Pottermore's experiment was fraught with contradictions. Fandom thrives on freedom, the ability to remix, reinterpret, and challenge canon. Pottermore, by design, was a closed garden. Fans could explore, but they could not create within the platform. They could read Rowling's lore essays, but not expand upon them. They could duel with spells, but not write their own adventures. Unlike fan fiction archives, where endless variations of Harry's world flourished, Pottermore offered curated participation, carefully engineered to maintain control over narrative and brand. This tension between freedom and curation became one of Pottermore's defining traits. For some, it was enough. After all, not every fan wanted to create, and the site's sense of discovery carried its own magic. But for others, the boundaries chafed. Compared to the wild, collaborative spaces of fandom elsewhere, Pottermore felt strangely sterile, a museum where you could look but not touch. Despite its limitations, the experiment was groundbreaking. Pottermore acknowledged, in a way no official platform had before, that fandom was not just about consuming content but about inhabiting an identity. It recognized that Harry Potter was no longer just a series of books or films, it was a shared cultural ecosystem. And while it failed to fully capture the organic vitality of fan spaces, it demonstrated something essential: stories in the digital age were not confined to their creators. They lived on in the communities who embraced them. In this sense, Pottermore was a prototype, a bridge between the early internet's fan-driven chaos and the modern age of branded universes. It tested the boundaries of what official digital fandom could look like, paving the way for other franchises to attempt similar platforms. Its legacy lies not in its longevity but in its daring, the recognition that fandom itself was a story worth designing for. From the moment Pottermore released its first essays, one debate rose above all others: was this canon? The Harry Potter series had, until that point, enjoyed a relatively clear hierarchy of authority. The 7 novels were the bedrock, J.K. Rowling's definitive vision. The films, though beloved, were always adaptations. Interpretations filtered through screenwriters, directors, and actors. Companion works like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, 2001 edition, or Quidditch Through the Ages carried Rowling's name, but they were playful supplements rather than serious expansions. Pottermore disrupted this order. Here was Rowling, writing directly into a digital archive, offering backstories and world-building details that had never been published elsewhere. We learned about McGonagall's first love, the backstory of Professor Quirrell, the peculiarities of wand cores, and the deep magical history of wizarding schools outside Britain. These weren't fan theories or adaptations, they came from the creator herself. But they didn't arrive in the familiar, legitimizing forms of print books or published interviews. They lived in a website, accessible only through clicks and navigation. This raised uncomfortable questions. If Pottermore was canon, then the Harry Potter universe was no longer just a series of books. It was a sprawling, transmedia archive. But if it wasn't canon, then what was it? Bonus content? Authorial footnotes? Something less binding, more ephemeral? The fandom wrestled with these issues in real time. Some embraced Pottermore lore as gospel, updating wikis and incorporating it into fan fiction as though it were a natural continuation of the novels. Others resisted, arguing that Rowling's essays often contradicted or complicated the established books, and that the digital format made them feel impermanent. A few fans even questioned whether any of this should be considered canon if it wasn't embedded in story. After all, was a lore dump about the history of cauldrons truly equivalent to a scene in Goblet of Fire? At the heart of the debate was a larger cultural shift, the recognition that canon was no longer a fixed concept. In the age of digital media, canon could be fluid, layered, and fragmented across multiple platforms. Pottermore wasn't a novel, but it was Rowling's voice. It wasn't film, but it carried official branding. It was both authoritative and uncertain. This ambiguity forced fans to reconsider what they meant by canon at all. Was it simply what Rowling declared, regardless of form? Was it what the majority of the fandom accepted? Or was canon only that which could be sustained within the core narrative? Pottermore did not settle the issue, it cracked it open, forever complicating how fans engaged with the wizarding world. In hindsight, Pottermore's canon question foreshadowed debates that would arise in countless other franchises. Star Wars, Marvel, DC, each would grapple with splintered continuities, expanded universes, and the friction between official and fan-accepted truths. Pottermore may not have resolved these tensions, but it taught an essential lesson. Canon is not just a matter of authorial decree. It is a negotiation, a living contract between creators and communities. The release of lore through Pottermore had done more than spark debate, it had shifted the ground beneath fandom's feet. Suddenly, the boundaries of the wizarding world were porous, spilling out of the novels and onto a platform that existed in the ever-changing ecosystem of the internet. For some, this was exhilarating, proof that the Harry Potter universe was alive, evolving in real time. For others, it was destabilizing. The books had felt eternal, printed and bound, immutable once published. But Pottermore revealed that even canon could be edited, revised, expanded, or quietly contradicted with the stroke of a keyboard. This realization reframed how fans thought about their relationship to the franchise. Harry Potter was no longer a closed narrative, it was a living archive, shaped not just by what Rowling had already written but by what she might choose to add or alter tomorrow. It was here, in this uneasy middle ground between permanence and flux, that the lessons of transmedia storytelling became clear. Pottermore was not just about the wizarding world. It was about what happens when a beloved story is stretched across mediums, when the boundaries of canon blur, and when the act of reading transforms into something participatory, digital, and endlessly unfinished. Pottermore stands as one of the earliest large-scale attempts to translate a globally beloved narrative into a transmedia ecosystem. Transmedia storytelling, as defined by media scholars like Henry Jenkins, is the practice of dispersing elements of a story across multiple platforms, with each medium contributing something unique to the larger whole. At its best, it does not simply repeat a narrative in different formats but expands it, encouraging audiences to piece together a richer universe through engagement across channels. On paper, Pottermore seemed tailor-made for this approach. The novels provided the foundation. The films expanded the visual language. Merchandising and theme parks translated the world into tactile experience. Pottermore, then, could occupy the digital layer, interactive, immersive, and ever-evolving. But the reality was more complicated. Where Pottermore succeeded was in exclusive lore expansion. Unlike the films, which adapted existing material, Pottermore offered original content, backstories, magical history, world-building details that no other medium had. In this sense, it contributed meaningfully to the larger Harry Potter mythos, aligning perfectly with the principle that each transmedia node should add unique value. It also tapped into the participatory spirit of fandom, albeit in a controlled form. Sorting quizzes, potion brewing games, and house cup competitions transformed fans from passive consumers into active participants. They were no longer just reading about Hogwarts. They were living it in a gamified simulation. While limited, this approach foreshadowed the rise of immersive brand experiences, from AR games like Pokémon Go to large-scale live events that blur the line between fiction and reality. However, Pottermore also revealed the risks of mismanaging transmedia. The platform's restrictive design clashed with fandom's appetite for creativity. Instead of empowering fans to contribute to the story world, it kept them within narrow pathways of sanctioned interaction. This left the experience feeling less like a collaborative journey and more like a digital theme park ride, guided, curated, and ultimately finite. Moreover, the digital format exposed Pottermore to the fragility of web-based storytelling. Unlike a book or film, which exists as a fixed artifact, Pottermore's content could vanish overnight. Indeed, when the platform shifted to its revamped version in 2015, much of the original interactive design, and even some of the lore, disappeared. This impermanence undermined the very idea of a transmedia archive. Fans discovered the hard way that stories told on the web are vulnerable to redesigns, corporate strategy changes, and simple obsolescence. Yet perhaps the most important lesson Pottermore taught was about balance. Successful transmedia requires harmony between corporate control and fan agency. Too much control, and the experience feels sterile. Too much openness, and brand coherence may fracture. Pottermore erred toward control, but in doing so, it clarified what fans valued most: the freedom to co-create, remix, and inhabit stories in ways that went beyond consumption. In hindsight, Pottermore was both a pioneer and a cautionary tale. It showed the potential of transmedia to deepen and diversify a fictional world, but it also highlighted the pitfalls of treating fandom as an audience to be managed rather than a community to be empowered. Later franchises would take these lessons to heart, designing platforms that leaned more heavily into co-creation, modding, and open-ended participation. Pottermore may not have perfected the formula, but it proved the point: in the digital era, stories can no longer be confined to a single medium. They must breathe across platforms, shaped not just by their creators but by the millions who choose to enter and expand them. Pottermore's life cycle, from its dazzling launch in 2011 to its quieter transformation into Wizarding World Digital by the late 2010s, was far shorter than the enduring saga of Harry Potter itself. Yet its influence radiates far beyond its lifespan. It was not merely a website, it was a proof of concept, a case study, and, in some respects, a mirror reflecting the evolving relationship between creators, corporations, and fandoms in the digital age. One of its most enduring legacies lies in how it reshaped the expectations of audiences. Fans no longer saw themselves as passive readers of a completed story. Pottermore taught them that a universe could expand, that the end of a book did not mean the end of discovery. This expectation of continuous updates, new lore drops, and evolving canon now permeates major fandoms. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe to serialized video game franchises, audiences anticipate ongoing nourishment rather than closure. Pottermore also left an indelible mark on digital publishing. It demonstrated both the promise and peril of building narrative worlds online. On one hand, it showed how interactivity and gamification could bring readers closer to a fictional universe. On the other, it revealed how fragile such efforts could be when tied to corporate infrastructure. Content vanished with redesigns, leaving fans to rely on archives, wikis, and screenshots to preserve what once was. This lesson reverberated widely, prompting later digital storytelling ventures to invest in longevity and fan archiving as a core design principle. In terms of franchise management, Pottermore highlighted the tensions between exclusivity and accessibility. By offering Rowling's lore only on a proprietary platform, the site generated hype but also frustration. The eventual migration of much of its content into books, Fantastic Beasts screenplay series, the Tales of Beedle the Bard reprints, etc., revealed that digital-first exclusivity could not entirely replace traditional publishing. The hybrid model, where content circulates both digitally and in print, proved more sustainable. Perhaps most importantly, Pottermore influenced how fans understood their own power. When parts of the site disappeared, fans stepped up to preserve, catalogue, and contextualize what might have been lost. The Harry Potter Wiki, now the Harry Potter Lexicon and Fandom Wiki, became not just a supplement but a safeguard. In this way, Pottermore unintentionally reinforced a key truth: the preservation and evolution of a story world are as much the responsibility of fans as of its original creator. Today, Pottermore is remembered with a mixture of nostalgia, frustration, and respect. Nostalgia for its unique atmosphere, the thrill of clicking through illustrated scenes and uncovering hidden lore. Frustration at its corporate missteps and eventual dismantling. Respect for the way it pushed storytelling into new territories, even if imperfectly. Its true legacy lies in its liminality. Pottermore was not a book, not a game, not a film. It was something in between, a digital experiment that asked hard questions about canon, fandom, and storytelling in an age where stories refuse to stay bound. Those questions remain alive today, not only in the Harry Potter community but across every major franchise that dares to stretch itself across platforms. In this sense, Pottermore endures not as a finished work but as a living influence. It showed us that stories are not just written, they are lived, extended, contested, and preserved in ways that no single medium, no single author, can control. When Pottermore first appeared, it was marketed as a gateway, the next step for fans who thought they had already turned the final page of Harry Potter. What it became was something far more complex, a glimpse into the evolving nature of storytelling itself. Through its lore, Pottermore deepened the wizarding world in ways that delighted and divided its audience. Through its interactivity, it invited fans to step into Hogwarts not just as readers, but as participants. Through its eventual decline, it revealed the fragility of digital spaces and the challenges of sustaining a living narrative. Looking back, Pottermore feels less like a destination and more like a bridge. It carried Harry Potter into the digital age, teaching both fans and creators what was possible, and what was precarious, when a story world expanded beyond the confines of page and screen. Its failures were instructive, and its successes were formative. The fact that its lore remains part of the canon, its spirit preserved in archives and wikis, proves that it achieved something remarkable. It made the wizarding world feel alive long after the books had ended. In the end, Pottermore's impact was not limited to the Harry Potter universe. It reshaped the conversation about how stories are told, who has the right to shape them, and how audiences engage with them. It forced us to rethink the boundaries of canon, the permanence of fiction, and the role of fans in sustaining narrative worlds. If the novels gave us Harry's story, Pottermore gave us our own, one of participation, discovery, and ongoing dialogue. And perhaps that is the truest magic of all. That in the digital age, the end of a story is never really the end. It is an opening, a call, an invitation to keep imagining. If this story has brought you peace tonight, if it stirred your imagination, made you smile, or carried you to another world, then I want to invite you to be part of something bigger. My dream for this channel is ambitious but simple, to create the best sleep stories on YouTube. Not just stories you listen to once, but immersive experiences you look forward to every night. Imagine professional voice actors bringing characters to life, custom soundscapes that transport you into the heart of the story, and production quality that makes each tale feel unforgettable. But here's the truth, I can't do it alone. Every like, every comment, every share and subscription makes a difference. It pushes the channel closer to growth and monetization, which means I can bring on more voices, expand the library, and produce stories that are even more magical. Here's how you can help right now. Like this video so the algorithm knows it's worth sharing. Comment your thoughts, what resonated with you, what you'd love to hear next, or even your own story ideas. Share it with a friend who loves stories as much as you do. And most importantly, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter or adventure. Together, we can build something extraordinary, a home for dreamers, readers, and lovers of fantasy from every corner of the world. I believe in the power of stories. They connect us, teach us, and carry us to places beyond our imagination. And with your help, this channel can become a place where that magic never ends. So if this story has brightened your night, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Together, we can make this more than just bedtime storytelling. We can make it a movement.